بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد إخوة الإسلام عباد الله. This is another sitting as it relates to misguided phrases. And the phrase that I like to put forward in this particular setting or sitting is the phrase, live life in pursuit of happiness. Live life in pursuit of happiness. And this phrase normally, when it's used within the inner cities, it's used to encourage a people to live their life in a manner where the moves that they make, the actions that they embark upon, and thus forth and so on, that they are moves that will produce an outcome of them being happy. Live life in pursuit of happiness. So if you're going to do A, B, C, or D, make sure the outcome for doing A, B, C, and or D is your imminent happiness. And usually when this statement is made, there really is no regard for if the action that one embarks upon is in accordance with that which Allah loves and is pleased with, or it's other than that. When the people in this society use it specifically within urban areas and the inner city, it's not used given consideration to what Allah wants for His creation. And so one of the things that we as Muslims, again, living in this society, phrases are used by the people in this society, and these phrases have implications. And so some phrases that are used within the society contradict and or clash with the guidance that's found within the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He says in Surah Al-Mu'minun, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا? He states, do they assume that we created them with no purpose? You were created for no reason whatsoever, but for you to just live in whatever manner you choose to live, whatever makes you happy. Do you think that you were created just to be happy and pursue happiness no matter how you obtain that? This is what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is teaching us. And then in that particular verse, He continues, وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ, and that you will not be returned to us. Yani, in other words, do you assume that you were created for no purpose and that you will not be returned or brought back to us? Do you believe that this is the case? Because for a person that believes that this is the case, then they'll indulge in whatever they choose to indulge in, regardless of how Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala views the action. Regardless if it's an action that's considered evil or an action that's considered praiseworthy, an action that the intellect can clearly ascertain is beneficial for an individual, or it is an action that brings about no benefit whatsoever. For the person that lives life in the pursuit of happiness, most times, they're not weighing any of these factors. They're not weighing any of these factors. And in this society, this is why you have baby mamas. This is why you have people addicted to certain types of drugs that they can easily come off of. And other than that, from the vices that are found within the society, that are numerous. But the reality is, this life, one of the main reasons why this particular statement is false is because happiness is an emotion. And nobody would actually achieve a life of happiness that's free from adversity. This life isn't scratch free. And our point and purpose within this life is not to just be happy regardless of how that happiness comes. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He teaches us, Tabaraka alladhi biyadihi al-mulku wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Blessed is He in whose hands is the dominion, and He is capable of doing all things. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. He who created death and life, testing you all, determining who is best in action. Who is best in action. So those that are best in action are those that understand that, one, they were created for a purpose. And two, they have to sacrifice in this life to achieve the purpose, or to be in accordance with the purpose in which they were created for. And they understand that when doing that, there will be times of happiness, as they traverse the path that they're on in this worldly life. But likewise, they understand that there will be times of adversity, times of difficulty, times of grief, times of sadness, and thus forth and so on. The believer understands that in this life he has to guard himself from certain types of behavior, and that he's encouraged to put forth certain types of behavior. We have an authentic narration that is narrated by Anas ibn Malik, and is collected by Al-Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih, and likewise Imam Muslim in his authentic collection, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stated, "Huffat al-Jannah bil-makarih, wa huffat al-nar bil-shahawat." He states that the paradise, it is surrounded by things that are hated, things that are difficult, and thus forth and so on. And then he stated, and the hellfire, it's surrounded by desires, things that are that man covets. That if they were to do it, they have a sense of momentary gratitude and happiness. This is what the hellfire is surrounded around. In another narration, it states, "Hujibat al-Jannah bil-makarih," that the paradise is veiled. It's veiled by things that are difficult, and the hellfire is veiled with desires, things that one's lusts and cravings is veiled by that. And so what is intended by this particular narration is that, one, the things that are being referred to that are difficult and may be hated by people, generally speaking, is, one, exerting efforts and being diligent in worshiping Allah the way that Allah commands for them to worship Him, and being continuous upon that. Being continuous upon that, and being patient when difficulties arise on account of one's worship, or difficulties that's outside of that, from sicknesses and loss of wealth and thus forth and so on. Being patient upon that, being thankful to Allah in times of prosperity, in times of good. This is what the paradise is veiled by. It's surrounded by. And so if one understands this, then one understands that in this life, you're in a pursuit of a reward that's greater than the happiness, that the momentary happiness that you find in this life. But in order to achieve that happiness, you're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to sacrifice time, sacrifice Other than that, in order to remain or to be diligent in worshiping the Creator of the heavens and earth, regardless of what act of worship you're putting forth, and regardless of what type of difficulty may be connected to it. And then you have to be continuous in that, and patient in times of difficulties, and thus forth and so on. So the Muslim should understand that life is not about being in the pursuit of happiness, because real happiness is not achieved in this life, in the sense of what that statement is used for. You may have moments of happiness, but this world isn't scratch free. This world is not trial free. So we understand that we're here for a purpose, and we sacrifice in this life in order to achieve that tremendous purpose. And that is real happiness, the abode of happiness and bliss in the next life. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He teaches us, "Man amila salihan min dhakarin aw untha wa huwa mu'min." Whoever does righteous good deeds from men and women, and they are believers, فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُمْ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً, then we will give them a good life. وَلَنُجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْرَهُمْ بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, and we will reward them. We will reward them with rewards that is better than that which they used to do. That is better than that which they used to do. And so the rewards in the next life, from the rewards in the next life, is that eternal bliss, the eternal happiness. In this life, you may have moments of that. But again, this life isn't scratch free. You're going to have times of difficulty. Not only does Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala tells us that He will test us, but likewise He has mentioned in His noble book how He would test us. From something of loss of wealth, health, provisions. We'd be placed in a state of fear. We may suffer from hunger at times, and thus forth and so on. So we don't live life in the pursuit of happiness to the point that we do whatever makes us happy. I saw an interview where it was a person who was a former crack addict. And he was describing the feeling that he would get from being high off of crack. And although he knew it was destroying him, he knew it had a negative impact on his life and his finances and thus forth and so on, it made him happy. It made him happy. And he said he was cognizant of this fact, that it was ruining him. But he wanted to keep chasing after that happiness that came with it. Now, this is an extreme example, but the reality is you can start to minimize the harms of certain actions. You can minimize them, or you could look at other actions that have less harm than smoking crack. And the same concept is still there. People are just doing things that they know are of no benefit for them, but because it makes them happy for that moment, they continue to do it. They continue to do it. They don't have a regard of if it's beneficial for them or if it's a harm for them. And they certainly are not concerned with if Allah is pleased with it or displeased with the action that they're doing. Why? Because they are living life in pursuit of happiness. And this particular understanding, outlook, and its phrase is misguidance when comparing it to the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.